There's a kind of man who seems to be doing everything right. He's attentive, he's helpful, he's patient, he avoids conflict, he listens more than he speaks. And from the outside, he looks like the dream partner. But on the inside, he's carrying a truth that's been buried for so long that even he has trouble recognizing that it's there anymore. And that is that he's angry. He's not loud about it. He's not violent. He's not the kind that throws things or storms out of the room. But it's like this slow, simmering resentment. And it's aimed not just at his partner, but also at himself as well. Because for years, he's confused love with obedience. He's equated kindness with silence. And he's also believed that if he can just be good enough, or maybe just agreeable enough, or dependable enough, it's then that she'll finally stay. Then he'll be worthy. The fear will go away. But the thing is, it never does. Because here's the secret that no one really talks about, I think, about people pleasing especially. It's when your love is a performance, your resentment becomes your understudy, if you will. And every time that he says yes when he means no, every time that he agrees just to avoid conflict, every time he shrinks his own needs, if you will, to make room for hers, well, he's not just creating peace, he's actually building a pressure zone internally, and it always eventually leaks out. It leaks out in passive-aggressive comments. It leaks out in sudden emotional distance, or in the way that he forgets to do the things that he once did eagerly. And it's in this quiet withdrawal of affection that you feel that effect. At first, she may not notice, because on the surface, he's still the same. He's still smiling, he's still accommodating. But slowly, she starts to feel it. Not because he said the wrong thing, but it's because he stopped. He stopped being there, present. His presence became formal, it became polite, predictable, empty. And that's when the relationship starts to experience fracturing. Not from a single fight, but from 1,000 unsaid sentences. Because here's the truth. You can't build intimacy on the foundation of avoidance. See, if you're scared to tell the truth, if you're scared that she'll leave when you actually show frustration, and if you believe that your worth depends on staying agreeable, well, then you're not really loving her. Like you're just protecting yourself. And deep down, I think there's this familiarity that you know this. And that's why the resentment creeps in. It's not because you hate her, but more so because you hate the version of yourself that you feel that you're forced to become, especially around her. And so you blame her. You resent her for not reading your mind and for always asking for more, and for not realizing how much you're holding back just to make things work between the two of you. But the truth is, she can't see what you've never said, right? It's unfair to expect that. She can't respond to the version of you that always stays hidden. And she can't adjust to needs that you never really voiced in the first place. She can't actually respect the boundaries that you've never actually set or implemented. And that's not really her fault, is it? That's actually yours. That's the cost of pleasing. it's that you build the connection on compliance, but not on the truth. And connection without the truth is just a recipe for a slow death in that relationship. But let's name something clearly here. Resentment isn't about what she's doing, okay? Resentment is more about what you're not saying. Does that make sense? And the longer that you stay silent, the louder the resentment gets. Rewind that and just listen to that again if you need. But you don't say anything though, do you? Because you're really afraid. Afraid that she'll leave. Afraid that you'll hurt her. You're afraid of what you might discover about yourself if you finally said what's real. So you bottle it up again and again until one day you erupt or you leave or you disappear emotionally and don't know how to come back because you never really practiced being real. You only practiced being safe. But love does not grow in safety, does it? Love does not grow in safety, especially alone. It grows in honesty. It grows in tension. It grows in truth. And until you trust yourself enough to speak honestly, even when it's uncomfortable, you'll keep resenting this person that you claim to love. You'll resent them for simply living in a relationship that you were too afraid to be real in. So this is where it begins, I think. It begins with the courage to stop pleasing. Not so you can become like harsh, and it's not so that you can bulldoze her with your feelings, but it's so that you can actually stop hiding behind the smile you've been wearing, and you can finally actually bring your full self into that relationship. And even if that self is scared, it's so important to do this. Even if that self is messy, even if that self doesn't always know the right words to use, you don't have to be articulate. You just have to be real. And the real is the only path to intimacy that is worth walking and experiencing and building on. So how did this begin? I mean, where do we men learn that pleasing is safer than being present? That silence is more noble than the truth? That our role in love is to adapt or accommodate or appease? Like, where do we learn this? I think it starts early, like usual, right? Long before romantic relationships were ever in the picture. See, we might have grown up in a home where speaking our truth, speaking up, led to conflict, where our anger was dismissed as disrespectful, or where our sadness was ignored, where our joy made someone else feel uncomfortable, or where our emotional expression wasn't actually safe to express. And so suppression became our survival mechanism, and survival became our strategy for connection. And so we became the boy who was easy, perhaps, the one who didn't make a fuss, the one who got just approval for being quiet but not honest, polite, right, but not expressive, agreeable but not authentic. And when we brought that boy into adulthood, well, we got praised for all those things, right? We became the good guy. We became the one who never starts fights, right? The one who always is helpful. The one who says just whatever we need to say that we think you want. And we think that was love. But on the inside, we started to disappear slowly, piece by piece, over time. Because When our strategy for love was based on disappearing, well, we eventually forgot how to even exist. And so in relationships, we didn't really know how to ask for what we needed. And we didn't really know how to hold boundaries in place without feeling guilty. And we did not know how to tolerate discomfort, like ours or hers. So we performed and we resented. And then we started to wonder, why don't I feel close to this person that I care for anymore? Why does she always seem a little disappointed in me? And why do I feel so alone in this relationship that's really supposed to feel like home, that we have a beautiful, deep connection? And it's because we made love a transaction, a silent deal, if you will. We said, I'll give you what you want if you promise never to leave me. But the thing is, she didn't agree. She didn't agree to that deal. She doesn't even know that that deal exists. And over time, she senses that something's off, because she doesn't want a man who just says yes. She actually wants a man who shows up with his truths. And there's a paradox in this. The paradox is this: the very thing that we were avoiding, which was conflict or tension or risk, it's this thing that actually deepens the connection. It's through these things that the connection gets more mature, because nothing builds trust like honesty. Even messy honesty, even honesty that's clumsy and not quite well worded or articulated kind of honesty. When she sees you willing to say the hard things, when she sees you holding steady in the fire of emotional truths, when she sees that your yes actually means something that you mean, because you're no longer afraid to say no, well, that's, I think, when she finally relaxes. That's when she stops walking on the proverbial eggshells, especially around your presentations of compliance. That's when she knows that you're with her, not beneath her and not against her, but actually with her, right? See, that's the kind of man that she wants beside her, I believe. Not one who's perfect or presenting as if he's perfect, but one who is present. Not one who's endlessly accommodating, but one who's actually emotionally available. Not one who's scared of losing her, but one who's actually committed to staying real, even when it's difficult and hard and challenging. And listen, this doesn't mean that we need to become selfish, man. It doesn't mean that we say everything that comes to our minds, especially without a filter. Moreover, it doesn't mean that we throw our feelings at her and call that speaking our truth. It means that we're developing the courage to stay with our feelings just long enough to understand what those feelings are, through the discomfort of it all, and the maturity to then express them in ways that create connection, not more confusion. Because here's the thing. Resentment doesn't just come from silence. Resentment also comes from disconnection. And when you disconnect from your feelings especially, you're in essence disconnecting from your needs. And when you disconnect from your needs, you're also in essence disconnecting from your own truth. And when you disconnect from your truth, well, then you're also disconnecting from those around you, including her. So you're there, right? But not really. You're present, but you're still absent. You're committed, but you're kind of checked out. And she feels it, right? She may not have the words for it per se, but she feels it. She feels that hollow version of you that's there but not really there. The man who shows up physically but hasn't really shown up emotionally. And this can go on sometimes for years. And that's not her fault, is it? That's your work that you have to take responsibility for and engage in. That work to reconnect, to speak up, to show up in truth, to risk being misunderstood, to stop rehearsing the version of you that you think that she'll love. And instead to start living as the version of you that can actually love fully, because you're fully present with her in that moment. That's what ends the resentment. Not her changing, not her asking less, not her loving you better, but you coming home to yourself. And when you come home to yourself, bringing in that self, that honest and flawed and expressive version of you, into the relationship like it's actually worthy of being loved as well. Because really, it is. It is worthy. It's worthwhile. And until you believe that, you'll keep pleasing, you'll keep pretending, you'll keep resenting, and you won't do it just to her, but also to yourself most of all. See, there's a cost to pretending, isn't there? I mean, it might not show up right away, but the bill is to be paid still. It will come. And it'll show up as exhaustion. It'll show up as that unique kind of tired that doesn't really go away even with sleep. Because it's not your body that's worn out. It's your soul. And it'll show up as irritability or that quiet edge under your voice when she asks a simple question, because deep down you're angry that she's asking anything of you at all. But you've trained her to believe that you're always available, right? It'll show up as distance. You on your phone instead of looking her in the eyes when you're connecting, you disappearing into your work, you turning intimacy into an obligation from her. It'll show up as a secret scorecard that you're keeping track of, like every nice thing that you've ever done for her, every sacrifice that you've made, every yes that you've never really meant. And all the while you'll be wondering why she doesn't seem to appreciate any of this that you're doing. But here's the kicker in all this. She never asked you to lose yourself. She fell in love with the you most likely who had a voice, who had a spark, who had a presence, not the shadow who now stands in your place. And when that man disappears, I think she grieves, even if she doesn't know how to say it. She's longing for you to come back to yourself, to stop filtering, to stop managing her feelings, especially like it's your job. And to stop offering this version of you who always makes it easier. Because love is not made through ease. Love actually grows through realness. Now, here's a truth that I don't think most men get a chance to hear, so just let me catch your attention, man. Being agreeable is not the same thing as loving, okay? It might keep things calm, but it won't help things get closer. And closeness is really what she's starving for. And it's not just the physical kind of closeness that I'm talking about here. It's not proximity. It's not even shared chores or time in the same room together, but I'm talking about like an emotional nearness, a spiritual kind of connection, the kind of presence that says, I'm here in a full way. My attention, my presence, my honesty, even when it's hard, I'm here. Maybe you've never actually been shown how to do that. Maybe you've never had a model of a man who shows up emotionally without losing his strength. One who is honest without being cruel. One who was firm without being cold. One who could actually say no and still be deeply kind. So you became the only thing that you have ever known, and that is pleasant, polite, predictable, and inside all the while your pain is growing. Because no one can hold their breath forever, right? Eventually you need to exhale. And sometimes it's that first breath of truth that feels almost like a betrayal. It feels like you're actually being disloyal to the version of yourself that you promised her at the beginning of all this. But here's what's more important. What matters far more than keeping promises to your past self. It's keeping your presence in the present moment, in this moment when you have that opportunity. Because love does not live in the man that you pretend to be. It lives in the man that you're actually becoming. They're the one who can stand in discomfort without actually folding. They're the man who can actually speak up without feeling any guilt. The one who is able to disagree without disappearing, if you will. That's the man who can hold space, especially for real intimacy. And it doesn't mean that she'll always like what you're saying or what you're offering, but she will trust you a lot more, because what you're actually saying, it actually means something now. There's weight behind your words. And because you're stopping the trade, if you will, for peace, and instead you started building this robust sense of stability through truth. So if you find yourself in a relationship where the resentment is beginning to creep in and you're watching it to do so, where you feel like you're always the one who's bending when things are being presented to you, where your needs have become invisible, if you will, pause. Pause not to blame her and not to explode, but pause to examine your own participation in that engagement. And ask yourself, where have I been silent? Where have I said yes, but really wanted to say no? Where have I actually swallowed my own truth until it turned bitter in my chest? And then as you're asking those questions and considering the responses to them, ask, what would it look like for me to come back? Not with an accusation, not with demands, but with a reintroduction of who I am. Saying, this is what's been true for me lately. Or I've been afraid to say this, and I've been trying to protect our peace in the midst of placating. But in doing so, I lost my own voice, my own truth. And I want to start showing up again in a full way, in an honest way. I want to show up kindly because I want to love you with all of me, and not just the part of me that's easy to accept. For instance, you could say that. That conversation might feel like an earthquake. But earthquakes don't just destroy, they actually reveal what's unstable to begin with in the first place, right? And then you get to rebuild. This time on something more stable, more strong. And it's not performance we're talking about, and it's not people pleasing, but we're talking about how can you be present courageously in that moment to speak your truth. And presence, when it's rooted in your honesty, is the foundation for the kind of love that has a long lasting date. So let me talk a little bit about the shame that's underneath all of this, because that's an important part of this dynamic. For many men, the reason that we can't tell the truth, especially in love, isn't just the fear, it's actually the shame. It's not the loud kind that yells, I'm worthless, but it's the kind that whispers something like this. It says, if I stop pleasing her, then she'll leave. If I stop being perfect, then she'll see how unlovable that I really am, or at least I feel myself to be. If I ask for too much, then I'll be too much for her. And so we have learned to become less on purpose, to be kept by someone in the version that we think is acceptable. And what's tragic about that is that many women don't even know that this is happening in the first place. They're in these relationships with men that they care deeply about, men who've never let them in, at least not fully, men who have not let them in emotionally or vulnerably. Because the man that doesn't trust her is the man who fully can't be seen or fully loved, for that matter. And so this cycle continues, and we give her what we think that she wants, while at the same time we're withholding who we really, truly are. And intimacy in this context dies in silence. So let's name this directly, shall we? Pleasing is not the same as loving. And silence is not the same as safety. See, what we've been calling love might just be self-protection. And what we've been calling peace, this might just actually be distance. And here's how we can know the difference, okay? The difference is this. Real love invites closeness, not only just a calm. It invites mutual knowing, not just quiet agreement. Real love holds space for both people to be seen and to be safe, not just for the one person to express and the other one to placate. So if your loving is keeping her happy but it makes you feel hollow, it's not love, that's performing. And the longer that we stay in that performance zone, the more that we'll quietly hate the very woman that we once wanted to give everything to. And that's not because she asked for too much in the first place. It's really because we gave too much of ourselves away without expressing honesty in the midst of that connection. And this is why integrity matters so critically, because integrity is not just about morals. Integrity is more about wholeness. And you can't feel whole if you're performing, if you're fragmenting yourself just to avoid being alone. The irony is this. The irony is that you're alone even when she's in the room, even with her hand in yours, because when you disconnect from your own truth, then you're forfeiting the very thing that would have created that real closeness, right? And that's the pain that I think so many of us men are carrying. We're in relationships that look healthy, but at the core they feel empty. And we have challenges figuring out why. And so we blame her. And we say she's never satisfied, or she's too emotional, or she doesn't really appreciate me and all the things that I do for her. But what if the real problem isn't what she's doing? What if the real problem is what we're actually hiding and not communicating or expressing or articulating? What if our resentment isn't really about her expectations, but instead about our own emotional avoidance? What if the very part of us that we're withholding is the part that she most needs to feel safe? Wouldn't that be unfortunate to find out after the fact? That's your honesty, your edges, your wholeness. That could be the game changer. Because truth is you can't actually be loved for who you really are until you bring all of you into the room. Not the pleasing version of you, and not the filtered version that you've curated over the long span that served you up to this point. Not the man who actually just shows up in fragments of himself, but the full you, the flawed you, the uncertain but willing you. And yeah, that means letting go of needs, to the need that you have to always be seen as good. Because goodness without authenticity does not lead to intimacy. It's just an image that you're managing. And she doesn't want to manage a man who's always trying to get it right. But I think what she wants is a man who's committed to being honest and real and communicating who he is, where his yes is, where his no is, the one who tells the truth even when it's awkward, the one who risks tension, the one who is willing to go there because the connection really matters far more than comfort. And it takes courage to go there. The one who trusts her with his actual feelings instead of handling her and giving her the version that he thinks she'll approve of. That's the kind of man that she can grow to trust in time. Not because he's perfect. None of us are. More so because he chooses courageously to be present. And you can't be present, my dear listener, if you're performing. You can't build intimacy on a foundation of erasing yourself. It doesn't work that way. You can't create lasting love while you're still resenting yourself for never being honest in that connection. So, if you feel the resentment rising, again, let me encourage you, pause. Pause, not to fix her, but to face yourself. Ask yourself, where am I disappearing, or where am I being tempted to disappear in this moment? Where am I lying by omission, if you will? Where have I traded my authenticity for acceptance? And as you wrestle with these questions, then ask, how can I tell the truth in a gentle, clear, kind, and honest way? And then you courageously walk into that space, even if you're feeling shaky, even if you don't like what you sound like, even if the conversation gets awkward and hard and uncomfortable. Because love without truth is not safety. It's just a slow suffocation. And you've spent this long time believing that if you kept the peace, then you keep the relationship. But let me tell you, real peace does not come from avoiding the rupture. Real peace comes from moving through that rupture and moving through it together. Because peace that is built on your silence is really not peace at all. It's a tension in that room with a smile. It's pressure that's building in a nice package. It's love without intimacy. It's presence without truth. And that's what begins to rot that relationship from the inside out. And you'll most likely notice it in the way that your patience gets thinner, and in the way that you start to flinch at her voice, and in how every question that comes your way feels like a demand, and how every request feels over time more and more burdensome. Not because she's asking for too much, but because you've given too much without committing to honesty and expressing what your needs are. And the thing is, when you overextend yourself without actually naming your limits, well, you're turning kindness into a sort of cage. And that cage will hold you, yes, until it really doesn't anymore. And eventually, something will snap, and the resentment will leak out. And the anger that you've swallowed will spill out. And she'll be blindsided, because in her mind, you were fine. That's what you told her all along. You were helpful, yes, you were agreeable, you were the one who never fell apart or never complained. You were the one who held the boat together. And what she did not know was that you were actually building a quiet case against her with every unspoken feeling, holding her responsible for it. And the moment that you finally tell the truth, it sounds like blame instead of vulnerability. It sounds like an accusation instead of being self-aware. Moreover, it sounds like you're exploding when when really you've just been imploding in silence for the long season that you've been together. So my dear listener, how do we break the cycle? Well, it's not with more effort and not with more niceness. It's not with another round of trying to prove your worth, especially to try and stay in that relationship. I think we break the cycle by choosing integrity over maintaining our image. And this means being honest before we're angry, right? It means we're setting boundaries before we burn out. And it means that we're willing to name our truth, especially when it feels risky or that it's going to harm that harmony of that connection. Because when you tell the truth early, you don't have to scream it later, okay? And when you show up fully, well, you don't really have to resent her for not seeing you, for not acknowledging your unspoken needs. See, you've made yourself visible when you speak for yourself, when you advocate and say, here's what I would like to see. That's what intimacy actually is. It's not just emotional sharing, but it's actually emotional self-responsibility. It's being willing to say, this is what I'd like to experience in this relationship. This is where I'm presently struggling. Or this is what I'm really afraid of, and I want to share this with you. Or this is what I haven't been saying for some time, but because I did not know how to say it, but let me fumble my way through this. And when you say that, when you say it gently without blame, you're creating room for real love and for collaboration. You're creating space for a closeness that isn't based on having to perform, but instead being present together with someone that you care for. See, she can't meet your needs if you keep hiding them under the smile. And she can't support your growth if you just keep pretending that you're fine. She can't feel safe with you if you never are committed to expressing your honesty, especially about your fears. Because at the end of the day, love does not need a mask. Love instead just needs a man who is courageously committed to being open. A man who's not just there to make her happy, but who also shows up with his own full self, who advocates for himself, who shows when he's messy, who is willing to vulnerably share his fear points, even when it feels like a risk. Because the bigger the risk is, the more opportunity you have to deepen that connection. See, we weren't made to be palatable. We were actually made to be emotional co-equals who are contributing and building something together. We weren't made to be quiet mirrors of what we think she wants. We were actually made to be human and to meet another fellow human in our equality, expressing our wholeness, our complexity, our capacity to hold honesty that's grounded in love. So ask yourself, even in this moment now, am I loving her with my full self, or just the parts that I think that she will accept? Or am I staying silent because I'm scared? Or is it because maybe I've mistaken silence for love? Am I building connection, or am I just avoiding conflict? And if the answer unsettles you, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. That actually means that the mask is beginning to slip. It means the performance that you've been relying on is beginning to crack. And it finally means that you're coming home to yourself and considering these reflections soberly. And when you do all this, when you stop pleasing and start relating, I think it's in that space you'll find that the connection gets deeper than you even thought possible. It'll become one that's built on, not on perfection, but on being present. And that's a courageous move. It's one that's built not on compliance, but on the commitment to mutually speaking your truths to each other. Not on pleasing her only, but also on choosing you in the midst of that relationship. Because that's what she needs. Not a perfect man, but a man who is present, a man who is courageously committed to staying in that moment through the discomfort. And really, that's what you need as well too, isn't it? Let me know your thoughts, your questions down in the comments below. I'd be happy to respond and encourage you further along this. We're playing in the deep end, but you got this.